Hi everyone, it's Mark Taylor here from Patient-Led Oncology and the Hacking Cancer Research Portal. Today we've got an amazing interview with an amazing person, Alex, who did a consult with me nearly a year ago. Was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal cancer and has successfully managed to get to NED. Now, with this cancer, only a small proportion of people, even with PD-L1, get to NED, around 5%. Now, it's possible that this is survivorship bias, but from the data I see a lot of people combining ivermectin with checkpoint inhibitors and getting to NED. There is a study turning a cold tumor hot, which looks at ivermectin taken with checkpoints in mice, and there were some outstanding results in that study. There were specific genes highlighted that can be tested for with a next-gen expression profiler, which can give you an indication as to whether that gene is more likely to respond to ivermectin and acting as effectively in a vaccine-type way. I'm keen to do a series of these because from what we see, it's slightly different from what people assume is really working in this space. A lot of people I know are all over the ivermectin bandwagon, and rightly so. There are so many studies coming out showing how effective it can be in boosting chemotherapy, boosting the results of TKIs, and it appears to be highly synergistic with immunotherapy. Please, if you've got an integrative doctor or a conventional oncologist who can support you on this journey, I do think this is one of the most effective treatments that I see that's out there at the moment. Bear in mind, we're not doctors and we can't provide medical advice, but this is something from the research we see that appears to be giving great results. But I highlight, it seems to be the results I'm seeing are those pairing it with checkpoint inhibitors. If you're lucky enough to have that part as standard of care, then you don't need to worry about getting hold of the checkpoint inhibitors. If you're looking for the experimental space, then there's clinics out there that will help you access these drugs. Even for those that have PD-L1 negative tumors, we've seen patients who've taken ivermectin and switch it from PD-L1 negative to positive and use that to get access to checkpoint inhibitors and have responded. So yeah, I hope you enjoy the interview. Another few key things to mention that come up a lot. One is the diet that this person went on, the keto diet in combination with immunotherapy can work very well. And the second one is meditation abilities. I work with a lot of patients, hundreds of them, and one key predictor I see for those getting great results are those able to meditate. That's also something I'm seeing a lot of people struggle with, and something I'm currently working on to try and understand what is it that we can do for cancer patients to help them in that meditative state. He talks about like pulling in sort of different energies and healing energies and things like that. That's quite an advanced approach. It really does mean you've got control of shifting the people talk about energies, but really talking about the feeling in the body, the mood. And a lot of cancer patients obviously are dealing with a lot of negative emotions. It's quite difficult to pull those positive emotions in. Yeah, three key things that I'm seeing in a lot of exceptional responders. Pairing very intelligent immunotherapies, careful use of diet that synergize with the approach, and also very intelligent mind-body work and confidence doing it. And you'll see that in the energy of Alex on the interview. So please listen and hope you learn a lot from it. Thank you. So Alex, good morning or good evening for you.
Yeah. How's it going?
Going very well. I'm over in Hong Kong. It's a beautiful morning here. And you're where are you right now?
I'm in Calgary, Canada right now. So it's about 7 p.m. starting to wind down. Got my blue light glasses on. So
very good. Yeah.
we're ready to rock and roll. Yeah.
We'll talk about that later because I think it's a hack that others can take note of. I was on a call yesterday coaching patients about sleep. It's a common issue, and I think these glasses, they look cool as well.
Yeah, they're comfy. I get quite a few compliments about them, so boost the self-esteem a little bit, which is nice.
Start a trend. Actually, I've got a friend, a health influencer who's looking to set up a business doing them. I think he did for a bit and he made a bit of money, but got out of it.
Yeah, no, they're starting to blow up a little bit, which is cool. So
cool. Today we're just going to talk about your journey. What I'm trying to do with these podcasts, and reluctantly got into podcast making because I realized the importance of stories like yours for others to learn from.
Mhm.
And I've done a few previous podcasts with no idea what to do, but now I've gone semi-professional. I've got like a proper podcast thing. So we're trying to get professional anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, so today we'd love to hear your story, how we connected, and then I'd love to use this opportunity to also go into some of the questions you've got, and really to reflect on some of the work that we do as an organization in terms of helping people navigate the research
Mhm.
in, moderately complex situations when there's a lot of choices out there. None of this is
Sorry,
medical
Mark,
advice.
your voice got very staticky and very, very demonic
Oh,
sounding.
really?
I'm not too sure if that's just on my end or not.
Oh, okay. Is that better now?
It's still quite staticky. It sounds like there's a vibration almost.
Oh, wow. Okay. So it's playing with the podcast equipment. It's still
Yeah, it
still
could
still a
be.
problem.
Yeah, and then now I hear my echo as well.
Oh, okay. So I think it was a fear I had. All right. So I think we're gonna have to do it again.
All good. Yeah, just all of a sudden it got very like robotic sound.
Yeah, I think what's happening is that better?
Yeah, that is.
Maybe we can try that. Let me see. I'm trying to do it without headphones, but because it's got
Okay.
the speakers on the other side. That better?
Let's see. Yeah, I hear my echo in the background.
Oh, you do. So, okay, let me put headphones in. All right, we'll include this as part of the podcast because it shows
Yeah.
the realism of amateurs trying to learn how to be
Yeah,
professional.
it's a learning journey for
These
us
are some of
all.
the. I think that should fix it. Well, no, I've got to change the microphone. One sec.
Okay.
Microphone. So, is that better?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We fixed it. All right, there we go. So, a good, there's a story behind my journey into this space as someone who's just looking for a cure for himself and
Mhm.
trying to move into the space of podcasting now. So, there you are. Headphones are
Perfect.
important. Um,
Yeah.
so, yeah, let's go into your story then. So, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about what you were doing and then like how you ended up with a unfortunate diagnosis?
Yeah, so I'm Alexander. I'm 23 and I was diagnosed with stage 4 esophageal adenocarcinoma that spread to the lymph nodes within my abdomen area. Um, the way I sort of first came about all of this is I started having some heartburn. I would say about a year before my diagnosis, and I went and I saw my family physician probably 4 or 5 times before being diagnosed, and she just kind of put me on PPIs,
Mm.
which help with acid reflux, and just kept on pointing in the direction of it being GERD. And I did some tests. Believe it or not, they saw an abnormality, but they just assumed that that abnormality was from stomach acid just coming up. But believe it or not, they didn't find any stomach acid in my throat. So it was a bit of a shit show to begin with. And then I went and saw her 4 times. We booked an endoscopy, which I would have done a month ago, and I'm sort of already 9 months into my journey. And then I finally decided, I'm like, screw this. I'm gonna go to the ER and do this sort of on my own. So went to the emergency, put some black makeup under my eye because here in Canada you really have to sell it in order to be sort of seen. Um,
Wow.
so
Please look
I
after
went
me.
there and I had some black makeup under my eye. I was like, I told them I need to be seen ASAP. So they did an endoscopy on the spot, and then that's when they told me I had a tumor in my esophagus. So that's when it kind of all started to spiral downward a little bit, and we were just kind of running around with our heads chopped off like chickens until we kind of we're able to accept what's going on, take a step back, and then figure out like, okay, this is here, this is happening. How can we get this going, and how can we sort of get the cancer out of my body because we truly came to believe that nothing is incurable and everything can be healed if you really put your mind to it. Um, you just have to trust in the process, trust in yourself, and at the end of the day, everything will turn out in the positive, hopefully.
Okay,
So,
excellent.
yeah.
And how did you come across me? What you did a consult early on? What was your?
Yeah, so my sister, I came across some of your research, some of your podcasts, and then we kind of looked into you a little bit more, saw that you're fairly educated in the space and thought it'd be a great resource to kind of learn more from and get more sort of knowledge and tips and tricks or even protocols to follow. So that's when we booked our first meeting with you. It was about a month after my diagnosis, and it was able to sort of confirm a lot of the stuff we were looking at, and also add a few additional therapies that are a bit harder to sort of find just through a Google search.
Yeah, yeah. And you were quite lucky, right? So you had I mean, this comes up a lot in exceptional responders. In fact, there's two groups. There's those that are totally new to the cancer world that are just so overwhelmed that
Mhm.
they trust their standard of care oncologist fully and they don't
Yeah,
even look for solutions. And
yeah.
then there are those that got some family member or friend who has experience in going through this. And so do you
Mhm.
want to talk about like how you got on this path so early?
Yeah, so luckily a close family friend of ours went through sort of the same experience with their mom who had stage 4 lung cancer, and she's cured and has been cured for multiple years now. She now lives with only half a lung, which
Oh,
is
wow.
which is insane, but can hold her breath longer than a Navy SEAL.
Wow,
Um,
wow.
so we were lucky that they were sort of put in our path because at the very beginning, it's so overwhelming. Like
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
going in and they're just throwing booklets and just throwing a bunch of info at you, and you're kind of still trying to absorb and accept what's going on. And luckily, they were able to sort of hold our hand and guide us through the standard of care, but also the like outside of box protocols that you can follow. So they put us in contact with a lot of like naturopath doctors
Okay, great.
and integrative doctors. So they were able to sort of guide us and sort of point us in the right directions, which was immensely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's something that I consider a lot in the work I do, and part of my work is kind of mission based. And how do we get this
Mhm.
information, the right information, to the people when they most need it? And it's still the major pattern is unless you do have a friend or family member who's been through it, you don't look for this stuff until right at the end, until standard of
Yeah.
care has stopped working. So you're incredibly lucky to have that friend.
Yeah,
Um,
it was they we believe it or not, we I met them for the first time last weekend in person. So we've been in contact over the phone for multiple months, and I we finally got to meet in person, which was amazing. So
oh,
that
okay,
was a
wow, wow,
blessing in
yeah,
itself.
what a
Yeah.
great friendship to form.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, so it was stage 4 in your lymph nodes, and then they put you on what was the standard of care you were put on?
So I did 16 rounds of chemotherapy and immunotherapy. I was doing oxyplatin, leucovorin, and my immunotherapy is nivolumab.
Okay,
I'm now just doing nivolumab. I'm going into my fourth session on this coming Monday, which will just be immunotherapy.
okay,
And that's going to continue for about a year.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Sounds good. And then do you want to talk about how that journey was? So you,
Yeah. So knock on wood, I'm so grateful with the protocol that I was following, I had no side effects or anything from the chemotherapy and from the treatment I'm doing. Like I still got my hair,
wow,
which is
wow, yeah,
great.
yeah, and you look
Um,
great. You look
yeah,
healthier than
thank
most
you.
23-year-olds do.
Yeah, it was like at first, they sort of I feel like in the like in the standard of care system, they have to tell you the worst of the worst.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's what they sort of told us, and that's what they told me. But luckily, I didn't really face any of those, and I think a lot of it had to do with sort of stepping outside of the box and doing more than just the chemo and immunotherapy, but building your immune system, sort of preparing your body for it. So I guess the only kind of side effects I got was some neuropathy in
yeah,
my fingers and toes, but those that's pretty much resolved.
yeah.
But
Okay.
overall, it was yeah, it was a good journey.
And then, do you want to talk about what treatments you were put on then, like from various quarters, your naturopath and the various
Hmm.
clinics and doctors you worked with?
Yeah, so I guess like there was a few pillars that I really stuck to. One of them was diet. So I followed a very strict ketogenic diet, like therapeutic keto. So I was testing my blood sugar and my ketone levels before every meal, an hour and a half after every meal, just to make sure I was in therapeutic ketosis. That was one main thing. Another main thing was just being active, being like working out still, going on daily walks, and just sort of moving my body as much as I could. Um, Third one was I would meditation and just sort of connecting and just healing energy and positive energy in the house and in the family. I feel like there was a certain time where I was meditating and it kind of just clicked in my head where I was like, I'm healed. Like
Oh, wow,
that's
wow.
it
Uh,
just kind of it clicked.
wow, wow, amazing.
So that was that's definitely those three pillars were big. And then sauna as well, high dose vitamin C. Um, and just overall, just like being as healthy as possible. Like I feel like that is the best you can do. So just be as healthy as you can. Those were sort of the pillars we followed. Everything that would make my body, my immune system healthy is sort of what we tailored towards.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I'm just going to share like I think some great stuff you brought up there, and I'm just going to share my screen. Just going to like talk about uh,
Sure.
because I don't always believe that ketogenic is the best thing to do in all cases,
Mhm.
but it's been very well studied with immunotherapy. So
Yeah.
um, uh, power up. So there's quite a few studies on keto diet and immunotherapy. So
Mhm.
it's a clever thing to do.
Mhm.
Um, um, and meditation, again, it comes up a lot in in the work I do. And you speak to anyone who works in this space, the mind body stuff is incredibly important. Kelly Turner. I don't know if you did you read Kelly Turner's book along the way or come across it?
I did not read Kelly Turner's book, but I guess the main people I was sort of at the very beginning, I was really into Joe Dispenza just
Yeah,
because he has some great guided meditations. And then I started kind of doing my own thing, just put on some peaceful music and just really honed in on healing energy,
yeah.
golden light, sort of going
Oh
through my
wow.
body, healing my cells. Like I would image my immune system like pretty much getting ready for war, like going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
fight. Um, I'm sort of built that way. Like my files for everything like cancer related is called War Plan.
All right.
So at the beginning of this, I kind of put my mind to it where like we're going to war and we're going to win this war. And I kind of also tailored it in the sense where it's like it's going to be a strict few months and years, but it's like almost like Olympic athletes where you got to sacrifice for the bigger picture. Um, so yeah.
Okay, yeah. And even your method, I work with a lot of patients who are attempting methods to work on the mind body. The one that does
Mhm.
come up a lot, interestingly, in a lot of stories you see in exceptional responders, is this visualization actually, and this bringing in
Yeah.
positive energy. If you study energy work, like in say qigong, it's a qigong method to be able to pull in a
Mhm.
particular vibration, and it's quite sophisticated actually to be able to do it because a lot of people get stuck in a negative emotion,
Mhm.
and to have the capability to switch the emotion at will is very powerful.
Yeah.
So, and I think getting guidance from things like Joe Dispenza is a great way of doing that. So,
Mhm.
yeah, you'll see a lot, and there's probably a few more interviews I'll do that there's a few patterns that come up then in the exceptional responders I see. One is getting this information really early through a family member or
Mhm.
friend, family member or friend. Another one is the ability to implement this mind-body work. Um, I'd say about 90% of people I work with struggle to implement it. It's just so
Mhm.
difficult that it's like weight training. You know, when you first
Yeah.
go, it's difficult, and a
Yeah.
lot are really struggling to even get started on it. It's
Mhm.
something I'm working through is like how to help people get to that with different healers who work in this space. Um, and you know, you obviously made some very difficult decisions quickly as well
Mhm.
to get going. You
Yeah.
did also get some off-label drug advice early on. Do you want to
I
talk about
did.
that?
Yeah. So we did some. I'm on a ivermectin and mebendazole
Yeah.
protocol. I was lucky enough to kind of um, be treated by Dr. I say McKees. I'm not too sure how people
Yeah, yeah,
pronounce
yeah.
it, but Makis McKees.
Yeah, yeah. Everyone
I
knows who
guess
you
he
mean.
was
Yeah,
sort of the one running headfirst at the
yeah,
ivermectin cancer protocol. So I was lucky enough to be one of his patients, and he gave me a protocol to follow. And I truly believe that made a big difference because I went from essentially stage four. And then 3 months later, my first CT scan came back as clear. And um, I was doing daily or monthly, like circulating tumor DNA
yeah.
testing. And 3 months later, my blood work came back as zero. So I feel like a lot of what we were doing was definitely working.
Yeah, and this is you know because of the work I do, I'm investigating what's working and what's not, and we look at
Hmm.
the research, and this is one of the. I mean, you've got so many things right. If you were to if anyone was to read our portal,
Yeah.
you're like a prime case. There's a lot of people who don't get things right because they get
Hmm.
lost in the chaos of all the opinions out there, and they either don't step forward or they do treatments that are not particularly effective.
Yeah.
Um, but um, but this one comes up a lot, and you know, it's
Hmm.
funny. I'm working with about 5 patients. We've had a complete response in a similar situation with you, and they've done many different protocols. But the one consistent thing between them all is ivermectin and checkpoint inhibitors. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to draw up the study now. I think it's one of the most powerful studies that I believe is out there. Hot. So, in the concept of immunotherapy, you know, in your cancer, I think from looking at the studies, I think it was about 6% of patients do get complete responses. You know, so
Hmm.
it's incredibly rare. Um, but but this study, which was done in mice, um, had amazing results in the combination of ivermectin and checkpoints,
Hmm.
basically curing a lot of mice, and not only curing. It's an incredible graph here, in that you know it's the tumor growth started happening and then started declining, went to zero, and then they tried to give the cancer again to the mice, and they couldn't do it. It effectively
Hmm.
vaccinated the body. It's a
Hmm.
concept called immunogenic cell death, where basically ivermectin works like a personalized cancer vaccine.
Hmm.
Um, the research suggests it's these genes here that need to be expressed for it to work. And the only company currently testing this is NextGen and the expression profiler. I kind of wish this was something some of the others like RGCC and Data would start to test, because from the data I'm seeing from following patients and from this study, and there's another human study being done in China and one in the UK. The China one did a small publication, and at very late stage patients, they're starting to get some response in some patients. Um, so I suspect this was a key reason that you got to NED, because of the patterns I'm seeing, and a lot of people um, are a little bit distracted at the start of their journey because it's not one that people are talking about a lot. A
Yeah.
lot of people, I mean, you're lucky that you got checkpoints, but I mean, one of the reasons I wanted to do this is I want to do a series showing like this pattern that's coming up a lot.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but all the other things help. You did, it's not just that. It may have been, um, once you understand our circle of immunotherapy, which is written about in our Hacking Cancer research portal,
Yeah.
um, it may have been fundamental to getting to complete response, because if you don't have the immune memory, what we talk about that, or priming of the immune system to be able to see the cancer, your
Hmm.
checkpoints don't work so well.
Yeah.
So it's possible, but then of course you did the vitamin C to help boost the effectiveness, the keto diet. So you really did quite a holistic um, protocol, all focused in on getting that treatment working.
Hmm. Yeah, it was very like it's very easy to sort of go down the rabbit hole
Yeah,
and just keep on going, keep on going. So there was definitely times where we had to kind of step back and see what was working and not rock the ship too much. So I
yeah,
think that's also important to note is kind of like find a few pillars that you truly have done strong research in and you truly believe. Like I feel like what you're doing, you should really believe in it as well.
yeah,
And then kind of focus on that. I think doing too much can get exhausting
yeah,
and you
yeah,
don't want to spread yourself thin. So that's yeah, we really dialed in on a few things and went to 110% on those.
yeah. And that's what we covered at our first consult in the first
Yeah.
month. It was looking at what you were
Yeah.
doing, and it's like, and you'd already done a lot of the research. You're already on the right
Hmm.
path, and it was me narrowing down like what you focused on, um, and and a lot of work I do is either looking at what they're doing and saying, look,
Yeah.
I can't see research in this, or you're on the right path, so keep
Hmm.
going.
Hmm.
Um, so you've got to NED. You've had the zero CTCs,
Yeah.
but you've had a small blip, right? So the CTCs have gone from 0 to 1. Is that right? On
Yeah. Yeah. So my last test was done March 9th. I got my result two days ago and it went from 0 ppm to 1 ppm.
Yeah,
So that was
and
at
this is
first it was kind of like, oh,
yeah.
but now we're just like I'm kind of past it and the next one's going to be a 0.
Okay, yeah. I mean, this is it comes up a lot. I mean, it's Signatera, right? The Natera test, is
Mhm.
that ctDNA test?
I did it with Tempest.
Tempus. Okay.
Yeah.
So, these minor fluctuations come up in almost all in almost everyone's cancer story.
Mhm.
In mine particular, bounced up around a lot, and then I think
Yeah.
the trick is over time to kind of become comfortable with that. I see, a lot of people and work with a lot of people who like start panicking, and that panic leads to stress and can impact the results. So this
Yeah.
ability to be able to handle these up and downs is a key part of healing. Um, and so what's your strategy now?
So at first there definitely I would be lying if I would say I wasn't a bit panicked and
Yeah,
it just wasn't like I was five it was either 5 or 6 tests where I was getting 0 and
yeah,
undetected and it was kind of like awesome. So this was kind of the first like detected, oh my goodness. So at first I was a bit panicked and kind of like, okay, what did I do? What changed? And then I reached out to you. I spoke to a few of my other doctors, and pretty much all of them told me the same thing in the sense where fluctuations will happen. A good analogy that the family friend that was helping us told me was like think of it this way. Like there was fire in your body being the cancer,
mm,
and you kind of burnt it all out. But in a forest fire, sometimes smoke after a few weeks just kind of sneaks out a little bit. So you kind of got to go throw water on it again. So the approach I'm taking now is I'm really focusing on the meditation, and just kind of relaxing my body, making like letting it know that everything's okay. And I'm gonna dial in a bit more on the diet and because I did open up my carbs intake a little bit. So
okay.
I'm sort of going back to the basics where I saw the positive results. Um, but I think the main two things will be sort of meditating, accepting it like emotionally and like just accepting that this is going to happen, but overall it's going to be trending to the positive, like to the right direction. and just dialing back on the carbs. That's what I've sort of dialed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see a lot, whether it's people, even in myself, definitely, you get comfortable in life, bad habits
Yeah.
start coming back, and maybe emotional stuff comes in, and then it's just a question of, okay, realigning. It's very, very
Hmm.
common.
Hmm.
And then you wanted today, we were going to sort of talk about options as well, other things as
Yeah.
well. So you've got like a fairly open door financially to kind of look at things like cancer vaccines, advanced
Yeah.
testing. So we're going to use part of this call partly to show or demonstrate some of the work that we do.
Hmm.
Again, this is not medical advice. We're a research consultancy firm, so we look at the research and we share that with patients, and we help people access. We'll find out where to access and some of the
Hmm.
practicalities of some of these treatments.
Hmm.
So what are the few things that you were considering?
So one of the organizations we were looking at is JLF
Yeah.
vaccine. So I have a meeting with them next week, and they're sort of going to run us through their entire options. I'm hoping they will kind of tailor it based on my specific case. So those were one of the people we were reaching out to. RGCC is another group that you pointed us in the direction of, and I appreciate you initiating that email that you sent over to me this morning. So I'm in contact with them, having a meeting with one of the providers on Friday. And then so that would like that includes, I guess, the dendritic cell
Yeah.
therapy, the vaccine, and then I'm kind of hoping that they might come up with a few other things that I can look into. But that's I'm hoping that I'll get a better understanding after meeting with these providers.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, let's go into that. And I wanted to use this opportunity to plug our cancer portal. I think
Yeah.
you're
And
starting
by
to
the
look at.
way, I got the paid version. It's worth it.
Yeah, thanks for the plug.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's I know it's what patients need, but sometimes the
Mhm.
patients themselves don't know what's needed. But
Yeah.
a lot of people don't realize. I mean, that's partly why I did what I did in terms of starting this mission, is trying to get clarity on what was working
Yeah.
for people, and then through my research, realizing that in the vast majority of things, there's a lot of research out there showing what works and what doesn't.
Mhm.
And a lot of patients don't realize that. They go on a Facebook group. There's a big problem in people just following a particular Facebook group. They enter it and they just follow what everyone's doing blindly without knowing whether
Mhm.
the research exists. So the point behind
Mhm.
this is to bring all the research together. So for example, so we're going to talk through a couple here. So you're in a, you're considered NED,
Yeah.
and there's a big category of patients and a growing category of patients that are NED, but have a risk of it coming back and need to stop it. Monitoring, you don't have a tumor marker, right? So you're getting ctDNA every month, right?
Yeah.
Um, so this is under control,
Mhm.
and we talk about if no tumor markers are available, CTC or ctDNA is a way to do that.
Yeah.
And then we've documented all of the things that have shown evidence to reduce recurrence.
Mhm.
So we've separated it into two. So these are, here's a page of things that have evidence and studies. Healthy lifestyle, physical
Yeah.
activity, exercise. You're doing a lot of exercise, right?
Yeah, I'm doing about 5 to 6 times a week.
Yeah.
I'm going to dial it back a little bit now because I feel like I might be overdoing it and sort
Yeah.
of stressing my body a bit too much. But yeah, I'm very active.
Okay. And then there was a study on artesunate,
Mhm.
reducing recurrence only 15 days, uh, ECGC, green tea,
Yeah,
omega
I'm
threes.
I'm drinking green tea every day, matcha. So
So yeah, so these are we've got it listed here. I think this is very powerful for people to use. A lot of people are doing. I see a lot of people. It sounds crazy, but a lot of people probably doing protocols that are increasing the risk of cancer coming back. I
mm,
had a patient the other day joined one of my free calls, and she had stage 2 breast cancer. She put herself in hospital by not following standard of care and doing crazy high dose fenbendazole regime, and she
mm,
had liver damage. And this has been
Yeah.
documented in the research, and a lot of people doing crazy things. So part of what we do is to try and avoid people doing silly things. And these have all been they're all documented researchers by top universities. And then we also in the staying NED, we got our advanced clinic options as well. These are the things that you'd have to go to a clinic to do. So these are the things we want to talk about today.
Yeah.
The things where you need a bit of money to do. So vaccines have very good efficacy in stopping the cancer coming back in lots of studies. We've highlighted them here. And likewise, dendritic cell vaccines have good studies in stopping the cancer coming back. So the one is the JLF Foundation that you're looking at. So let's call them up. There's a lady in the group, Julie, who works for them. It was a cancer charity set up by a patient actually to kind of bring cancer vaccines, neoantigen cancer vaccines to the masses. And you're just speaking to them now.
Yeah.
And you have a call with, I think, Julie in a few days, right?
Yeah, on the 24th of March.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the process with this company, it's around $100,000. There's a lot in the States. Unfortunately, the neoantigen vaccines, they're fairly new, pretty advanced, the peptide-based ones. And unfortunately, in the States, they're pretty expensive. So not everyone can afford them. But they're safe, very little side effects. And I have around 7 people now in my group who've done this or another version. And none of them have recurred, actually. So 7 out of 7 have had difficult cancers, and they're all doing really well.
That's amazing.
So I think it's a sensible thing to do in your case. You have a biopsy. One of the things is you need a biopsy, right?
Yeah, so I did a biopsy here, like when this first started, and they stored it in like preservatives. So I can't recall if yeah, so I think they might like I'm pretty sure we told them that and they
Yeah.
still were open to meeting, so there
Yeah.
might be other options. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, every vaccine maker has its own requirements. There needs to be sequencing on it. So it needs to be in a form to be able to sequence it.
Yeah.
So that's a path you're going down. And then the other thing you want to talk about is dendritic cells, right?
Yeah.
Now this is complex, particularly for someone in Canada. If you're in Europe, there's a lot of providers out there, mixed quality. It's an easy area to get scammed in. If you follow basically, if you do Google searches, you're more likely to get scammed because people pay for, you're either paying for a product or you're paying for marketing.
Right.
So you have to be a bit careful. It's worth doing the research to understand how they're making the dendritics, how they're training them. And in Europe, you've got a big choice, but in Americas, I think one of the only providers is RGCC.
Yeah.
You looked at a immunosine, but they needed a fresh biopsy, which you couldn't get.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to travel to Europe, you've really only got RGCC.
And would you say, Mark, all the providers on RGCC like can be well trusted and
Um, it's a complex thing to answer. I mean, I did a lot of RGCC on my journey, and I was getting results. So my journey is I did 3 cancer vaccines with them. I did a dendritic, I did SOT many, many, many times. But I would respond when I was doing their treatments for a bit, and then the cancer was coming back. But I wasn't doing things like checkpoint inhibitors. I did a short period with one clinic, but not on a prolonged basis. But the treatments they're doing have like solid backing by research that they're not doing themselves. So I mean, like on my portal, you'll find all the studies on dendritic cells. I've been to the lab, so I'm sharing this. So this is the RGCC website. They've got two sets of things. They've got tests, which we'll talk about afterwards, and they've got therapies, and they've got a growing range of therapies. This used to be called, I believe this is SOT, so mRNA gene silencing. It's focused on reducing resistance, the resistant genes. Um,
Right.
and then you have cell therapies, and they have a few. They have this.
Mhm.
They've changed the name, so it's confusing. This used to be called SOT. This used to be called VaxoQRE. Now it's Clavic.
Okay.
To I don't know where they come from. So this one is a multi-cell therapy. I
Mhm.
think it's mentioned here. So cytotoxic T cells. They've got natural killer cells, monocytes, and dendritic cells. So it's a combination of many immune cells.
Mm.
Um, Probably the most sophisticated of what they do.
Okay.
Um, you need to extract blood. They culture them, grow them, train them to go for proteins in your cancer. So
Mm.
the T cells and the dendritic cells are focused on uh, expressions that your cancer has.
I see.
So they are trained. And I've been to the lab. A lot of people have mixed opinions on RGCC. I think a lot of it is misunderstood.
Mm.
It's very hard. I've been to the lab. It's an incredibly huge lab with a lot of top scientists. In my opinion, in a case like yours, where you can't get access to anything else,
Yeah.
I think it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, you've got to find a practitioner. That's the hard part. So I
Yeah.
contacted RGCC and I sent you a list of practitioners in that space. So
Mhm. And I guess like with all of these different therapies, like which one would you recommend? Would you recommend like just the dendritic cell or
it's hard. I mean, I always reference back to research and I don't provide medical advice. What I
right?
would say is, if you go on our portal, you'll find all the studies showing how
Okay.
dendritic cells can stop recurrence happening or improve,
Okay.
reduce the likelihood of cancer coming back.
Hmm.
Now, this has been studied a lot. What they've done
Yeah.
here is combine many different things that have been studied. So, for
Yeah.
example, NK cells have been studied and can also help reduce the cancer risk coming back. Dendritic cells can. T cells, trained T cells,
Hmm.
less research out there, but the concept makes sense. So
Yeah.
this one is the most sophisticated. I work
Okay.
with the clinics and doctors using it. They're saying, it's not a magical cure, but in a case like yours, it should be effective,
Right.
at least stability. But it's
Okay.
not. There's
And
not a lot of studies behind it. They have published a paper um, on their experience with it.
mm,
Um, so, but it's not like a double-blind study because
right.
it's
Right.
got bias. So this one is probably the most advanced. This one is
Hmm.
more researched.
Okay.
Um, and then they have this vaccine-based approach as well. And this is a useful vaccine for those that either can't afford a neoantigen
Mm,
or don't have a biopsy because it's taken from the blood.
right.
Um, so I don't like to kind of like tell people what to do, but these
Right.
these two here, and I think either makes sense depending on mm, your appetite for what you want to do, whether you want like a treatment that has a lot of research or something a bit more sophisticated with less research.
And can you do both?
Yeah, you can. I mean, but it's a kind
Okay.
of overkill because in this one
Right.
here, Clavic QRE, they include this.
Right.
So you're kind of getting this and other things.
Gotcha.
Um, yeah, and you could do both. You can repeat these things. There's almost zero side effects from these treatments.
Okay.
Um, probably the one I would do in your case is this one if it were me.
Okay.
But you might struggle to find a clinic doing it. This one is also, you're not in a dire situation, so.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Um,
Um, and then I
and
guess another point, yeah, I wanted to touch on the tests as well.
yeah, so you wanted to just get prepared for like what may work against the cancer. There are lots of companies doing these tests these days.
Hmm.
What a lot of people don't understand is they think Tempass and companies like that do sensitivity testing, and they don't.
Right.
They're focused on like pretty much trying to align conventional drugs, but
Hmm.
not necessarily looking at integrative treatments like high dose vitamin
Hmm.
C. Um, they Onconomics is their main sensitivity test
Okay.
from blood. some details about, you have to do the count first. So they have to, I mean, it's not a bad thing to do anyway, alongside your ctDNA testing, is they will give you an indication of how much cancer they see in the blood as well with their filtering methodology. And then you play for the onconomics test. So the total cost will be around 3,000 euros, including both.
Okay.
And then there's a sample of a report we can go through here, so when you're using, so this is RGCC, but Data do a test like this. Next Gen Oncology do a test like this. And then there's it depends whether if you've got biopsies, there's also other companies you can use.
Right.
And you need to establish how you want to use your biopsies. So if you've only got one biopsy left, you probably want to use it for the vaccine that you're getting made. If you've got a few, you could also use it for set tests like this. And again, on our portal, we list all the providers that we found, so you can look through them.
Awesome.
So it looks at cytotoxic drugs. So chemos, whether you need this right now, I don't think so. It gives you an indication on overexpressed genes that could be causing resistance. Not so relevant for you because you're not on cytotoxic drugs. And then it looks at monoclonal antibodies, TKIs. So a huge amount of things that it can give you information on. And some of the clinics we work with, and some very experienced, some of the top integrative oncologists are using this, have been using this for years, and they trust it. But there's a lot of subtlety in how this test is used. If you're not with an experienced practitioner, it's difficult for them to interpret it. The use of this test is really only beneficial in a practitioner who really understands what's going on. It's worth bearing that in mind. But what you will get is so these are all gene expressions that you can focus on with off-label drugs. And then towards the end, okay, so this one is not so Onconomics Plus. We're doing so Onconomics just looks at the conventional drugs. Onconomics Plus looks at conventional and also natural supplements and off-label.
So is that the test that I guess would be able to check all the boxes off? Is the
Yeah, it's one of them. We can talk about the others as well. So, I mean, given you're considering RGC for a cell therapy, you're going to have to look for a practitioner who works in this space, because part of the issue is practitioner. You need to find a practitioner who will do the test for you. So, I'm not saying this is the best or the one you should do, but there's a practical issue around it. And it gives a view on substances that are more likely to work, whether it's statins, other doxycycline, 2DG, colloidal silver. What I would say is these are indicative. A lot of people put too much weight on these things, but they give you some comfort in, okay, well, vitamin C looks effective, curcumin looks effective. It lets you narrow down with some degree of science to be able to narrow down exactly what to do. It also, given the conventional drugs, it lets you see, which chemo, there's a possibility you may need to use chemo down or want to go to a low dose chemo center, and it gives you an indication of what you're sensitive to, what monoclonal antibodies, what TKIs. So it gives you a lot of information to kind of like help navigate the next steps.
Nice.
Can you get hypothermia where you are?
I can.
Yeah, so the combination, it's worth, maybe we can draw up a study, but there's a combination of vitamin C plus hypothermia in a non-small cell lung cancer study. Both are very synergistic with immunotherapy, but there was a study done when people had run out of all options, and there was a subset that carried it on for years, and basically the control arm all passed within 5 months, and then those that did that combination lived for many years.
Nice. And is that even without like the presence of disease or anything like that?
No,
It's
that was
just
stage 4 patients. That was
okay.
Yeah, so but it showed you it was able to stabilize stage 4 patients for years, just alone, without even any conventional meds, so vitamin C and hypothermia alone.
Wow. So would you need like I guess an active tumor or like presence of disease in order to do that? Or could you do that like if no tumor is present?
Yeah,
Like
because
for
you,
example, in
yeah, you
my
could.
case, they're saying that there's like no mass tumor or anything. Is
Oh,
that something
you
still I
mean
could
where they
do?
focus the hypothermia?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
very good question. I mean, I you could play a defensive role,
Mm.
and say like, where was it in the past? Move it between your esophagus and where the lymph nodes were. You could switch it every time. Or, for
Mm.
example, if it was pancreatic cancer and you'd got to NED, you just had surgery, there's a high risk of it
Right.
coming back. It almost always comes back in the liver. So you defensively put it on the liver. You can look at the
Right.
studies, find out where and try and defensively manage it.
I see.
Yeah. So this gives and then one thing that people don't know about so much is it's not even listed here, and it's a big. You get 5 substances you can test for
Mm.
free on top of what they do already.
Okay.
And this is one area where I think there's a lot of opportunities for people.
Hmm.
So yeah, we can talk about if you find a practitioner, we can talk about what those 5 are. A lot of people, in my opinion, lose some valuable information on things that may work. And you can
Okay.
also take combination. So if you, for example, you wanted to look at combination of ivermectin with mebendazole, you could do that combination.
Nice.
And then it does test ivermectin as well. So
Oh, sweet.
yeah. Um, So it's a lot of information. It's one of the providers, not saying this is the one. The others
Yeah.
are, say Data, Next Gen Oncology, both are very good. But
Hmm.
this, given you're going down the dendritic route, I think is, because it's an energy thing as well. You don't want to be
Yeah.
working with 15 practitioners ideally.
Yeah.
You'd want, just a few ones that you trust that you can
Yeah.
work around.
And Mark, you also mentioned that like that test, or I guess the tests that you do, you have to be careful in the sense where the person reading it really has to understand it.
Yeah.
Like how can you find or how can you know if the person who is reading it and the person that you are dealing with is
Yeah,
actually reading it
it's a very good
correctly?
one. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I advise reading our portal because we explain and like we're reviewing like the science behind what they're doing, the
Mm.
practical stories we hear. Some errors that people make is they assume that just particularly on natural supplements, they
Yeah.
assume just because you've got like a sensitivity on a CTC test, that
Yeah.
natural supplements are enough to control active cancer,
Yeah.
and that will let people down. And
Hmm.
I think there are, it's easy business for a lot of naturopathic clinics to do this test. Oh, you need these 20 different supplements, blah blah blah.
Right.
So that's something to look out for. So when they put the cells in the supplement, they leave it in there for like days, and
Right.
they leave it at levels that you can't get to with oral supplementation.
Mhm.
Um, Now, what I would say is that so you need to use them with like a grain of salt. You need to you're like, okay, it's showing some indication that it works better than another substance.
Yeah.
Um, and then what I recommend you do is cross-reference what it's suggesting with the clinical research. So,
Okay.
for example, you are on an immunotherapy strategy for the rest of the year, right?
Mhm.
So I would be looking at, the way I would be doing this is I'm going to share our Hacking Cancer we'll portal now because I think this because you also wanted to talk about off-label drug approaches, right?
Yeah.
For things you're doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to now go back to our cancer portal um, because there are lots. The theory of how immunotherapy works, if everyone understood it, um, we would be having much more cases like yours of people getting to
Right.
NED. So we recommend everyone understands the theory because once you understand the theory, you can see where resistance comes from. So
Hmm.
um, for a large part of patients doing checkpoints, they get no response, primarily because they're not trained the immune system.
Yeah.
Um, Cancer vaccines you're considering to help with that.
Hmm.
Uh, that's a RGCC treatment that's got some
Yeah.
evidence. Um, and then I think we talk about immunogenic cell death, which is I think um, the approach you got with ivermectin. Um, so you've got a few areas in this area. There are other areas that resistance could come through. So the microenvironment.
Yeah.
So it's Tregs. You you don't have a biopsy available. So if you had a tumor come up, then I would be recommending like a next gen expression profiler because it gives you all this information and tells you where the resistance comes from. But let's
Right.
touch wood, you hope you never get to that stage. But if it does,
Yeah.
you can get a lot more information.
Yeah.
So it's worth understanding these methods. And you may want to be like intelligently guessing where potential immunotherapy resistance comes from. If I suspect you'll manage it without meditation and things alone. But if, for example, manage worst case scenario, it's worth going through all of these steps, and each of these steps is a potential area of resistance.
Yeah.
So Tregs could be an issue. And then you can look through here, and it'll talk about, how to address Tregs. MHC class could be an issue, and it talks about here. VEGF could be an issue, and it talks about here. The extracellular matrix can be an issue, and it talks about what to do there. Immune exhaustion could be an issue, and it talks about what could we do there. So I suggest reading this, or all of these two chapters anyway. If you don't understand any of it, put it into Perplexity to get it to explain it.
Yeah.
But then this second chapter, the practice, it talks about off-labels and supplements that are synergistic with immunotherapy. So these are obvious things to do. Are you doing vitamin D monitoring?
Yeah.
So you got that covered. And then these other ones, magnesium, check magnesium levels. Propranolol has some evidence to help. Check the studies. Some probiotics. And there's a few chapters here. There's one on retrospective human studies. So, for example, statins increase survival with checkpoints from 11 months to 37 months. Yeah. So it's a good example. So let's say you do the RGCC test, and it shows that you're sensitive to statins on their test. And then you're thinking, well, I'm on immunotherapy, and there's lots of evidence to suggest statins improve immunotherapy results.
Yeah.
And so you could use the two to kind of narrow in, okay, what to do. Everything becomes like intelligently thought through. There's a lot. Antihistamines, the same thing. Lots of studies improving outcomes. Metformin improving outcomes. Vitamin E. So there's a huge amount out there. It was almost the bigger issue is there's too much out there. How you narrow it down, and
that's that's exactly what I'm sort of running into is like, and I kind of talked about it earlier, is kind of going down the rabbit hole and kind of knowing when to take a step back and sort of pause. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I think it also is important to kind of go down that rabbit hole as well, because that's where you can find the information. But it's important not to kind of spread yourself thin and
and just have some way of being a bit intelligent how you do it. So like I say, the RGCC is one test. There's data is a good test as well. Next gen expression, the next gen sensitivity. I'd say next gen is probably the most sophisticated company out there, because you can get very, very sophisticated, that you can combine 3 different drugs at different doses for the sensitivity test. So, but I think for your case, you're not in a dire situation. You don't need that level of sophistication. If someone's stage 4 running out of options, you really want to get super technical with things.
Right. Awesome. So I guess just to go back to the CC test, there's so many tests within the list.
Yeah.
Do all providers provide those tests, or is it sort of specific providers only do specific tests and etc.?
Most RGCC will do the test. They almost all do the test. So, I mean, the main one to do that's common is the Onconomics Plus, because it includes both conventional oncology drugs and natural supplements and off labels. I mean, you could choose to save a bit of money and just do the Onconomics extracts,
Hmm.
and just focused on supplements and off label drugs, you save a bit of money.
Right.
But I think, having in your back pocket all the other treatments that can work for a little bit of extra money is probably worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yeah, the rest, you have to do the OncoCount or OncoTrace in order to do this. So there's a first step, which is to give you a
Okay.
CTC count, and then
Okay.
you'll follow up with that. The rest of
And
them,
I'm assuming the provider will pretty much will tell me that you have to do the on account one before the other
yes,
one.
they'll know all this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then finding a provider. So it was actually another patient who asked me a similar question. I'd already
Mhm.
got the cell providers in the US and in Canada, so I've sent you
Yeah.
that list.
Awesome.
But typically for other patients, what they should do is if they're interested in going with them, contacting the company saying, "I live in this location. What doctors are doing these things?"
Yeah. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah.
So I think that covers most of your questions,
Oh
right?
yeah,
So I think that's very useful for patients to learn from, and gives an indication of what's
definitely.
out there. So
Definitely. No, and like the Hacking Cancer website, like when you first sort of told me about it, I thought I was gonna open like a 800 paged document and kind of have to go through, but it is very easy to kind of go through, and I like how you guys have it quite concise and straight to the point.
yeah.
So it is an easy tool to use, which is great.
Yeah. And yeah. So we're trying to encourage. I know it's what patients need,
Yeah.
because a lot of patients don't realize they need it.
Yeah.
Um, but for those that spend the time trying to understand how it works, because it's segmented by section. I'll come back to it as well. So
Yeah.
uh, what it's also got for paid users is a chat bot, so you can ask it questions. Um, and we're training this all the time. There are issues that we see in some of the other chatbot engines.
Yeah.
So we've tried to fix that. So what can I do to stop a reoccurrence? So you can ask it questions. It uses not only our research, which we're constantly updating, but we're also scouring the internet. So it will ask you questions. It's going to test my spelling now. Well, how do you spell esophageal?
Oh, I, I
Sopho.
I have to search it
Yeah.
up every single time as well.
Do you know your mutations?
Um, so I PDL1.
PDL1 positive, are you?
Yes.
Pause. Pause. Active. Okay, and it's given some. So like it's that stuff we
Mhm.
talked about from the books.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, you can ask it questions and it comes up with stuff.
Yeah.
So for those that don't want to read the book, you can ask the chatbot questions.
Yeah.
Cool. So
Awesome.
does that cover everything you had on your chest?
Yeah, that definitely, I guess one more thing I'd like to cover is in the sense of off-label drugs.
Yeah.
Um, like would you have any information on how to find the right doctors to sort of help navigate through that? Because I know it's sort of like the black market of finding finding
Yeah, I
doctors.
mean, what I would do is again, like trying to streamline the number of doctors you get. It gets very confusing and a bit risky when you have like three different
Yeah,
doctors,
yeah,
because one's got one idea, one might have another idea, and they might even work against each other.
yeah.
So I think what I would do is go to RGCC, like
Mhm.
their process, um, because it's talking about off labels in their test, it should open the door to experts. So I'd use that list I've given you of practitioners, and
Okay.
you could probably take that list, go and look at their website, see if they mention off labels, and then find the
Yeah.
one that's like closest to you that does the test, the dendritics, and off
Got you.
labels.
Got you.
Like it's Yeah, it's a growing field. There's a growing number of people doing it, so it's hard to keep track of who's, there's always new people coming up, and
Yeah. Yeah, and that was also, I guess, another thing through my journeys. I kind of stuck with I'll be honest, my oncologist at the hospital told me to not do everything I'm doing outside of the standard of care, but
yeah,
I didn't really listen to that. So I just kind of used the oncologist at the hospital for like the chemo and the immunotherapy and the scans. And then I sort of assembled the Avengers
yeah, yeah,
outside of that. But yeah, there was at the very beginning, I would say there was like we were talking to so many people, and then we kind of dialed down into three people, being
yeah, yeah,
you, a naturopath, and then an integrative doctor. So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's
No, that's a
also
good, yeah, yeah. So yeah,
yeah,
build a small team. You can get overwhelmed,
def
try and get people close that can do as much as you can, because there's
yeah,
energy involved as well.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, well,
Awesome.
amazing conversation, amazing story, and
Well,
good luck on your journey.
thank you. I appreciate it, Mark, and I look forward to chatting again in the future.
Sounds good. Keep in touch.
Take care.
Take care. So thanks for listening into that interview. We hope it provided some hope to people and was some knowledge there that you can gain from. We're going to be doing more of these. I'm having to learn how to make podcasts and speak on podcasts. So bear with me while I learn. If you look back through my previous podcast, you'll see the slow improvements happening over time. So hopefully in a year's time, they'll be semi-professional. For those of you who want to support us, we run a portal which has all the research that we can find that can help you on your cancer journey. It's $19.99 a month and it contains all the research we can find that can help someone on their cancer journey. So it is continually updated. We have a team updating the research all the time. We're about to do a major upgrade. We've got 21 pages of research to load into it. It's a lot to read, but those that are reading it are really appreciating it. So it's not for someone who wants a quick solution for cancer. It's for those that want to really understand it, really invest, and really get a holistic view of all the different ways you can treat cancer. What we realized along the way is some of the pockets that people dive into are very narrow. And what we've done is review everything from immunotherapy, metabolic treatments, protecting the body from side effects, the mind, body, spirit system. It's got everything in there, even practical issues about how to choose a doctor. It's got a chatbot, an AI-enabled chatbot, which we believe is very good in partnering with some of the traditional AI chatbots. We've trained it to narrow its focus of research in things that are practical, that can be done, and that can help your outcomes. So how do I prove my results to GBM? You type it in there. And what it's really doing is we built prompts around it to really comprehend the objective of the person entering this world. I don't know any of this yet. So it will ask you questions to try and narrow down your specific situation to make the research more focused. And it will give you a summary based on our research and also from an AI search that it does in the background. If you try these things in other AI engines, what you'll start to realize is, unless you're very explicit in the prompts, it will not pull back necessarily things that potentially could improve your outcomes. For example, I'm sure if you did the search on ChatGPT, it would not pull back this Cas9 protocol, which had a huge impact on outcomes with GBM. So it turned a deadly disease into a disease that potentially could let the person diagnosed live a very long time. So that's our objective. We're developing it over time. We're pulling in more research over time. And we're building an AI tool to collect the user's information so that it's even more focused on the outcomes for you. So thanks again. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to presenting more of these videos very shortly. Take care.